Some would say, I screwed Bret Hart. Bret Hart would definitely tell you, I screwed him.
By the time Bret Hart stepped center stage for his matchup with Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series.
And right now I'm under contractual review with both the WCW and the WWF.
He had apparently already closed the door on his WWF career.
That Bret Hart screwed Bret Hart.
This video does not start on November 9th at the Molson Center. It starts the night before, in a locker room bathroom in Detroit, Michigan. Bret Hart was working a house show. He had been warned by multiple people that Vince McMahon might try to change the finish at Survivor Series. So he pulled Earl Hebner into the bathroom privately and told him directly, "The brass are going to try to screw me. I need to know where you stand." And Earl Hebner, the man who had been Bret's referee for some of the most important matches of his career, who Bret considered a friend, swore on his children's lives. "I'll quit first," Hebner said. "If they ask me to do that, I'll tell them to go to hell, Bret. I swear." Bret went to sleep trusting that oath. The next day he arrived in Montreal, saw Hebner assigned as the match referee and relaxed. He had the confirmation he needed, and then he did something that would haunt him for years.
Are you kidding me?
The context that made Montreal possible started in mid-1997. The WWF was losing the Monday Night Wars to WCW. McMahon had overextended on talent contracts and was genuinely close to bankruptcy. Bret Hart had been offered a multi-million-dollar deal by WCW and had accepted it. Hart's WWF contract expired in late 1997. McMahon had initially encouraged him to take the deal. The company could not afford to keep him. The problem was the WWF Championship. Bret Hart was the champion. His contract included a creative control clause giving him the right to determine his own match finishes. McMahon needed the title off Bret before Bret left for WCW, and Bret refused every proposed finish that involved him losing the championship in Canada, his home country, his most devoted audience. The agreed finish for Survivor Series 1997 was a brawl that would end in a double disqualification, with other performers running in to stop the fight. Both sides had agreed to that. McMahon had agreed to it in writing.
I look at it from the standpoint of the referee did not screw Bret Hart. Shawn Michaels certainly did not screw Bret Hart. Nor did Vince McMahon screw Bret Hart.
The Montreal Marriott meeting is one of the most documented and disputed sequences in wrestling history. Wrestling Observer's Wade Keller reported that a 2-hour gathering took place on the Saturday of Survivor Series weekend, with McMahon, Jim Ross, Pat Patterson, Jim Cornette, and Michaels all in attendance at some point. Those who left the meeting cheerful entered it that way. Patterson and Ross, seen in the hotel lobby afterward, were described by witnesses as visibly shaken and irritable. In Michaels' own account, Patterson was present for part of the meeting but had no idea what was finally decided. McMahon pulled Michaels, Triple H, and Briscoe aside as the others left, and it was in that smaller conversation that the finish was agreed. Michaels later wrote that he initially refused, that he wanted nothing to do with it but ultimately agreed to do whatever was needed. On the morning of the show, Vader found Bret Hart backstage and told him, "Be careful today." McMahon also kept Pat Patterson, Bruce Pritchard, and Jim Ross completely in the dark. He later explained that he was concerned about their loyalty to Bret, potential leaks, and the need to maintain trust with the roster. Each man gave a separate account of not knowing, and each was visibly shaken when they found out.
What I had suggested to Vince is, why don't we have the match in Montreal, and I'll drop the belt the following night in Ottawa.
Moments before Bret Hart walked through the curtain, Gerald Briscoe found Earl Hebner. He told Hebner exactly what was going to happen. When he sees the sharpshooter applied, he calls for the bell. That is the finish. Do it or you're fired. Hebner, who had sworn on his children's lives that he would never do this, had a decision to make. He thought about the oath. He also thought about his family, his salary, and the fact that he had been told by the man who held his job in his hands that he would lose it if he refused. He agreed. And then Briscoe told him one more thing that has been largely ignored in most accounts of this story. Hebner was wired. He had a microphone and earpiece behind his ear during the match. McMahon and the production team could hear every word he said inside the ring. Bret would later say in a 2014 Sports Illustrated interview that he had been warned to get into the ring and never let anyone put a submission hold on him. He had specifically resolved before the match that he would never go down to the sharpshooter. The oath changed that calculation entirely.
Look at this! Oh, you're kidding me. Michaels, are you going to try to beat Bret Hart with a sharpshooter?
The match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series 1997 ran for 19 minutes and 58 seconds. For most of those 19 minutes, it was, by most accounts, a genuinely good match. Both men were among the finest in-ring performers in the world. The Montreal crowd in Bret's home country was intensely invested. The finish sequence began when Michaels applied the sharpshooter. Hart's own submission hold turned against him. Bret was working toward the ropes. He was in the process of reversing the hold, turning his body toward a break. He was not submitting, he was not tapping, he was fighting. Hebner looked at Vince McMahon at ringside. Then he signaled wildly, both hands frantic, emphatically, and called for the bell. The timekeeper rang it. Hart's face, captured on camera in the immediate seconds after, is one of the most documented expressions of real shock in the history of televised professional wrestling. He understood instantly. He spun to his knees and looked directly at McMahon standing at ringside.
What happened?
When Bret Hart reached the backstage area, he went immediately to McMahon's office. He laid his shoulder into the door. The door was bolted to the floor. He couldn't break through it. Bruce Pritchard had been watching the match from the gorilla position, the area directly behind the entrance curtain, with Owen Hart and Davey Boy Smith. Pritchard had been there specifically to cue Owen and Davey Boy for a run-in as part of the agreed double DQ finish. He had not been told about the screw job. When the bell rang, Pritchard thought it was a mistake. He was trying to reach the production truck, asking the timekeeper what had happened when Davey Boy Smith turned to him. "They just fooked him," Davey Boy said. "They fooked Bret. What do we do?" Pritchard had no answer. Bret walked into his own dressing room and found Shawn Michaels already there. Michaels told him his hands were clean. He swore to God he knew nothing about what had been planned. Bret later confirmed that Shawn broke down crying in the locker room after this conversation.
Oh. Yeah! They found him!
Where is he? He's in there? He didn't show up.
Vince McMahon went to Bret Hart. He explained his reasoning, that he could not allow the WWF Championship to leave the company with a performer heading to WCW, that he had been put in an impossible position, that he had done what he believed he had to do to protect the company. Bret Hart listened. Then he told McMahon to leave. If McMahon did not leave the room immediately, Hart said, he was going to knock him out. McMahon did not leave. Hart hit him. One punch. McMahon's eye blackened immediately. His jaw was fractured. Several people who were present described the punch landing cleanly. Hart then went to Shawn Michaels, thanked him for the match, and left the building. Other wrestlers on the roster were furious. Multiple performers threatened to walk out of the company. Mick Foley actually followed through and quit for one day. Bret talked several people out of leaving. He did not want the Screwjob's damage extended beyond himself. McMahon had built WWF around a culture where the boss's word was absolute. The Undertaker's intervention was remarkable, precisely because it was one of the few times in that era where someone with enough standing in the locker room could walk into Vince McMahon's locked office and make a demand that McMahon had to respond to. 1 week after Montreal, Vince McMahon sat across from Jim Ross on Raw. His eye was still visibly blackened from Hart's punch. He had spent the previous week managing the fallout from a locker room that had been shaken to its foundation, and he said something that nobody in wrestling had ever said on national television in the way he said it. He addressed what happened in Montreal, not as a commentator, not as a background executive, but as himself. Vince McMahon, the owner of the World Wrestling Federation, speaking directly to the audience about a real event that had real consequences. He said Bret Hart had been given every opportunity to do business like a professional and had refused. He said Hart had left McMahon with no choice, and then he delivered the line that created the Mr. That interview is the moment the modern WWE character era began. McMahon behind a desk, black eye visible, explaining himself not as a commentator but as the owner, not hiding from what he did, owning it, reframing it.